Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I need to give you some background first because this story won't make sense without it. My grandmother is a former nun and hardcore Catholic who made my entire childhood a nightmare. When my dad was 17, he got his girlfriend pregnant after getting her drunk. That girlfriend became my mom. In the Catholic Church, this was basically the worst thing that could happen. My grandmother pressured my mom to convert to Catholicism and marry my dad immediately. They went on to have two more kids after me, but since I was born out of wedlock, I became the family black sheep. It wasn't just my grandmother either. My dad's entire side of the family treated me like I was cursed or something. They made it clear that they would never accept me or my mom. The ironic part is that I'm 24 now with a professional job. I'm married, have a child, and I'm completely independent. Meanwhile, my 22-year-old sister and her fiance live with my parents and expect everything handed to them because they're financially irresponsible. My youngest sister just moved out with her partner, but neither of them have jobs. Yet somehow I'm still a disappointment in the family. My grandmother was specifically abusive to me. She called me a child of the devil and a demon multiple times. She threw things at my face for no reason. When I had to stay at her house every weekend and school break until I got a job at 15, I wasn't allowed any privacy. My bedroom door had to stay open. She would sit at the foot of my bed until I fell asleep, and she would scream at me if I locked the bathroom door. She also had this thing where she would threaten to call the cops if we didn't do exactly what she wanted, and she actually followed through. There were multiple times where she called the police because we didn't answer our phones fast enough. I've woken up to cops knocking on my door at 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. on separate occasions. This happened whether I was at home or out of town, even when I didn't tell her where I was staying. When I turned 20, I decided I'd had enough and moved out with a couple of friends into a duplex. Of course, my grandmother immediately demanded that I give her a key to our place. She told me I needed to give her a copy of my key right away. I flat out refused. She insisted that she had a right to know what was going on in my life and needed to be able to check on me. I told her that she didn't have a right to invade my privacy or my roommate's privacy, and that I was an adult now. I refused for multiple reasons. First, I didn't need her showing up whenever she felt like it, especially since one of my roommates was my boyfriend. Second, we threw get-togethers with friends, and I didn't need her lecturing everyone about how Dungeons and Dragons and anime were tools of the devil, and that we all needed to go to church with her. Third, all of us roommates had agreed not to give out keys to family members, and I wasn't about to let my grandmother invade my friend's privacy just because she couldn't handle not controlling every aspect of my life. She still called multiple times every day and found excuses to come over as much as possible. Every single visit for the first couple of months went the same way. She would tell me she still needed that key, and I would tell her that I still said no. She would argue that it was ridiculous and that she had a right to make sure I was making good choices. I would remind her that she had no rights in my house and that this wasn't her home. She would get furious, but I stood my ground every time. A few months later, my youngest sister was spending the night and my grandmother dropped her off. We were planning to go shopping, but I couldn't find my keys anywhere. I looked through the entire house twice. I told my sister how weird it was because I swore I had left them right on the counter. She suggested maybe I had put them somewhere else, but I insisted I had checked everywhere and always put them in the same spot. My grandmother, who was still there, offered to pick up whatever I needed from the store. She asked what I was planning to make for dinner. I really didn't want her help, but I was getting frustrated and we needed groceries. I reluctantly agreed and told her we needed chicken, rice, and some vegetables, then thanked her. After she left, I went back to searching for my keys. Then suddenly, there they were, sitting right on the bar where I always put them. I told my sister how strange it was because I swore I had checked there like 5 times. She suggested maybe I had just missed them and I agreed that I probably had since I do stuff like that sometimes. I didn't think much of it at the time because I'm pretty absent-minded normally, but a few days ago my sister told me what really happened, and I'm absolutely furious. Apparently, the next day when my grandmother picked up my sister, she couldn't wait to brag about what she had done. She told my sister to guess what she had done yesterday. When my sister couldn't guess, she revealed that she had taken my keys when I wasn't looking and got a copy made while she was out shopping. My sister was shocked and asked if she had really stolen my keys. My grandmother insisted she didn't steal them, just borrowed them to make sure she could get in to check that we were making good Catholic choices. She said I had left her no choice since I wouldn't give her a key. My sister pointed out that it was my private home, but my grandmother argued that I was still her granddaughter and someone needed to make sure I wasn't doing anything sinful. My sister was shocked but didn't know what to do at the time. She finally told me because she felt guilty keeping it secret. Now everything makes sense. My grandmother has never barged in while I was home, so I'm guessing she was coming over when nobody was there and going through all of our stuff. This wouldn't be the first time either. She used to do the same thing at my parents' house and then berate me about anything she found that she didn't like. When my sister told me this, I was seeing red. But then I realized something even more disturbing. I asked my sister if my grandmother had been trying to get into my current house. My sister confirmed that she kept asking if she knew where I kept my keys now. She said my grandmother was frustrated because she couldn't figure it out. That's when I knew I had to do something. I called my grandmother immediately and told her I knew what she had done and that I knew she stole my keys and made copies. She claimed she didn't know what I was talking about. I told her not to lie to me because she had bragged about it to my sister. She insisted she was just making sure I was making good choices, and that's what grandmothers do. I told her that's what abusive people do, and that normal grandmothers don't break into their grandchildren's homes. She argued that I was being dramatic and she was just looking out for my soul. I told her she was never getting near my keys again, and that if I found out she had been in my current house, I would call the police and press charges for breaking and entering. She said I wouldn't dare call the police on my own grandmother. I told her to try me because I was done with her controlling behavior. She hung up on me, but I wasn't finished. I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed at my old duplex, even though I don't live there anymore. My former roommates deserve to know what happened and to feel secure in their own home. They were horrified when I told them what my grandmother had done. Then I called my parents and told them everything. My dad tried to make excuses for her at first, but my mom was furious. She told me she'd always suspected my grandmother was doing things like this, but never had proof. A week later, my grandmother called my sister, asking her to find out my new address because she wanted to visit. My sister told her she didn't know it, which wasn't true. I'd given strict instructions to my family not to give her any information about where I live. My grandmother then asked if she could at least tell her what kind of car I drove now because she had seen me at the grocery store but couldn't catch up to me. My sister said she couldn't help with that either. My grandmother was apparently furious that her little spy network wasn't working anymore. She tried calling me directly, but I'd already blocked her number. A few months later, I heard through my parents that she'd been complaining to anyone who would listen about how ungrateful and sinful I was for abandoning my family. She told everyone at her church that I was probably living in sin and needed their prayers. The irony is that I'm probably the most stable and successful person in my entire family, but because I won't let her control me, I'm somehow the problem. I keep my keys in our bedroom at the back of the house now, and she'll never get her hands on them again. I've made it clear to everyone in my family that if they give her any information about where I live or work, they'll be cut off too. My husband is a police officer, been on the force for about 8 years. I work as a teacher at the local elementary school. We don't get many date nights because of our schedules, so when we do manage to squeeze one in, we really treasure it. That night was supposed to be one of those perfect evenings where we could just be a normal couple enjoying each other's company. We'd just finished this amazing dinner at our favorite Italian place downtown. The food was incredible, the wine was perfect, and we were laughing about the funniest things that happened during our week. I was telling him about this kid in my class who insisted that dinosaurs still lived in his backyard, and he was sharing stories about the weird calls he'd gotten that week. It was exactly what we both needed after a long stretch of barely seeing each other. When we were driving home, I remembered we were completely out of milk and bread. I know it sounds boring, but when you're trying to pack lunches for work the next day, these things matter. So we decided to make a quick stop at the grocery store near our house. We pulled into the parking lot, and that's when his phone started ringing. I could tell from his face it was work-related. Even though he was off duty, sometimes urgent situations come up that need his attention. I told him to go ahead and take the call while I ran into the store quickly to grab what we needed. He asked if I was sure and offered to tell them to call back, but I insisted it would only take me 5 minutes since I knew exactly where everything was. So I headed into the store while he stayed in the car handling whatever crisis had come up. The place was pretty quiet for a weeknight, just a few other shoppers scattered around. I grabbed a cart and went straight for the dairy section, then over to get bread. Easy in and out just like I planned. I made my way to the checkout area and got in line behind this woman. She had perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive-looking clothes, and was checking her phone constantly while tapping her foot impatiently. She had a cart full of groceries, way more than my few items. I'm just standing there, minding my own business and thinking about how nice our evening had been when I noticed something weird happening. This woman in front of me started casually moving items from her cart into mine. At first I thought maybe I was seeing things wrong, but no, she was definitely trying to sneak her stuff in with mine. I watched when she slipped a package of expensive steaks and some fancy cheese into my cart. The audacity was unreal. I politely told her that those were her items and asked her to put them back where they belonged because I wasn't going to pay for them. She turned around and looked at me like I had just slapped her across the face. Her eyes went wide and then narrowed into this angry stare. She demanded to know what I had just said to her. I repeated that those were her items and that I had seen her put them on my cart, so she needed to take them back. Then she launched into this sob story about being a single mother trying to feed her children. She claimed her kids were starving at home and called me selfish for not helping someone in need. This woman was trying to guilt-trip me into paying for her groceries after literally trying to steal from me. I told her I was sorry about her situation, but I was only paying for my own items. I explained that she couldn't just put her stuff in my cart and expect me to pay for it. She completely lost it and called me a heartless witch. She went on about how hard it is to raise kids alone and said that people like me made her sick. The cashier was watching this whole thing unfold with her mouth hanging open. Other people in line started turning around to see what all the commotion was about. I felt my face getting red from embarrassment, but I wasn't about to back down. I started to say that I understood things were tough, but that she couldn't just do this. Before I could finish my sentence, she actually shoved me hard. I stumbled backward and nearly fell over. Everyone around us gasped. The cashier immediately asked if I wanted her to call a manager, but honestly, I just wanted this crazy woman away from me. I told the cashier it was fine and that I just wanted to pay for my stuff and leave. I quickly moved her items back to her cart, paid for my bread and milk, and got out of there quickly. My heart was pounding and someone had actually put their hands on me over groceries. I practically ran to the car where my husband was just finishing up his call. He noticed I looked upset and asked if everything was okay, since I'd been so quick. I told him he wasn't going to believe what had just happened in there. I told him the whole story about this entitled woman trying to make me pay for her food and then shoving me when I refused. His face got darker and darker when I talked. He was furious that she had put her hands on me. I knew it was crazy, but I asked him to just go home because I didn't want some random person ruining our nice evening. He said no way, explaining that what she did was assault and that he should go in there and handle it. I pleaded with him to just leave, telling him she was probably gone by now anyway. He was clearly not happy about it, but he started the car. We were just pulling out of our parking spot when we heard this loud crashing sound. Glass exploded everywhere, and I felt something sharp hit my cheek. Our passenger side window was completely shattered. I looked up and there was the same woman from inside the store, standing about 10 feet away from our car, holding what looked like a rock. She yelled that this was what I got for being a stingy piece of trash. I touched my cheek and my hand came away bloody. She had thrown a rock through our window and the glass had cut me. I screamed at her, asking what was wrong with her and that she could have killed someone. She said good, and that maybe next time I think twice before being so selfish. My husband jumped out of the car faster than I'd ever seen him move. He told her that he needed her to step back and put her hands where he could see them. She sarcastically said great. Now I was getting my boyfriend involved, and called us tough guys for picking on a single mom. She bent down like she was going to pick up another rock. That's when my husband tackled her to the ground and pulled out his handcuffs. He arrested her for assault and destruction of property, then read her the Miranda rights, telling her she had the right to remain silent. When she realized my husband was a cop, all that entitled attitude melted away real quick. She started backtracking, saying it was all a misunderstanding and claiming that I had attacked her first. My husband told her that she had thrown a rock through our car windows as there were witnesses and security cameras and that she needed to stop talking. Within minutes, backup arrived. Apparently, when my husband called it in, they ran her information and found out she had outstanding warrants for similar incidents. This wasn't her first time pulling stunts like this. We had to go to the emergency room to make sure there wasn't any glass in my cut, but thankfully, it was just superficial. While we were sitting in the waiting room, my husband told me that Karen was looking at serious jail time because of her prior record. A few weeks later, we found out she got sentenced to 2 years in prison. Turns out she had been running this scam at different stores around town, targeting people she thought looked like easy marks. When people refused to pay for her groceries, she would get violent. What started out as a perfect date night turned into getting assaulted twice by the same entitled lunatic. But at least she got what was coming to her in the end. I need to get this off my chest because I'm starting to question my own sanity. My wife and I got married recently, but we've been together since December 2019. Ever since then, my family has made our lives hell. I'm talking about my mom, my sister, and sometimes my brother, his fiancé, and even my dad jumping in. My family always used me as their punching bag. My mom and sister especially would tear me down constantly, making me feel like nothing I did was ever good enough. I developed severe anxiety from years of walking on eggshells around them. When I tried to speak up during family conflicts, I just shut down completely. It's like my brain would go blank and I couldn't form words. My wife is the opposite of me in these situations. She stays calm and level-headed when things get heated. Early in our relationship, my family made it clear that if they had something to say to her, she was perfectly capable of defending herself. So we agreed she'd handle confrontations with them since I'd just freeze up anyway. For years, my wife and I talked about cutting contact with my toxic family members, but I kept hoping things would get better. Last weekend, my brother and his fiancée asked us to help paint their new house. When we showed up, they had brought exactly one paint sprayer and one roll of tape for 7 to 9 people. That should have been our first red flag. My wife, my mom, my sister-in-law and I started taping while my brother painted. Once we finished taping, there wasn't much else to do except wait around. Eventually, my sister started painting too. Around 7 p.m., my wife and I figured we should order food for everyone. My wife was on one side of the yard talking to some people about food orders, while I was on the other side with my mom and sister. That's when things went sideways. My sister handed me the paint sprayer and told me it was my turn. I mentioned that I thought I was supposed to go get food, but she said too bad. My mom chimed in saying she had asked me to help paint. I pointed out that I had helped with the taping, but she said she didn't ask me to tape, she asked me to paint. I just agreed with her to avoid more conflict. My wife heard them raising their voices and got worried. She'd seen this pattern before where they gang up on me, so she came over to check. She asked what all the yelling was about. My mom said they were just giving me crap. My wife said okay, but that it sounded like yelling from where she was standing. My sister screamed that I could talk to my family without my wife around and that it was none of her business. My wife was confused and asked what she meant. My sister yelled even louder that my wife had no right to be a jerk to my mom, that it wasn't her business, and that I could talk to my family without her there. My wife explained that she was just asking a question about her husband and wondered if there was a problem with that. My sister called her a witch and said she didn't get to talk to my mom like that. My wife said again that she was just asking a simple question about her husband. Then my sister took a couple steps toward my wife. My wife walked toward her too, not backing down. My sister got literally centimeters from my wife's face, so my wife put her hand on my sister's chest and told her to back off. That's when my sister started swinging. My sister threw the first punch at my wife. My wife put her hands up to protect her face and accidentally hit my sister back. I immediately pulled my sister away while my wife stepped back. My sister started screaming that my wife had hit her and that someone should call the cops. She claimed my wife had attacked her. I thought my sister had calmed down, so I let her go. Big mistake. She lunged at my wife again and got another hit in before I could pull her back. Then my brother and sister-in-law showed up and started screaming at my wife. My sister-in-law yelled that my wife was making them look like trash to their new neighbors. My brother told us to get off his property and get the hell out of there. My mom jumped in too, calling my wife names and saying she had no right to come at her like that. My wife hadn't even moved from where she'd been standing when she asked her simple question. We left, obviously, but that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text after text, call after call, all of them blaming my wife for everything. They called me a terrible brother, son, and uncle to my sister's kids who had witnessed the whole thing. Then they crossed a line that made my blood boil. My wife and I needed some old tax forms for financial paperwork. My wife's parents sent theirs over immediately when we asked, but my parents decided to hold our documents hostage. My dad told me I'd have to drive an hour to come get them and that I needed to have a conversation with my mother. He said my wife wasn't welcome at that conversation and that she wasn't welcome in their house anymore either. I asked if mom could just email the documents to us since we really needed them. My mom's response was just maybe. Maybe. Our important financial documents. And she said maybe. That was my breaking point. My wife and I sat down that night and made plans to cut contact completely. We're done playing their games. The hardest part is my nephew. I wrote him a letter explaining that we wouldn't be around for a while, but that we still love him and can play Xbox together anytime. My sister is withholding that letter from him. Who knows what lies they're telling him about why we disappeared. My other sister, who I'm still close with, is now getting extra abuse from the family since they can't target me anymore. She's always been a black sheep like me and she wants to cut contact too, but it's harder for her since she lives right down the street from our mom. We've set a 6-month timeline. After that, if they want any relationship with us, they'll have to attend family therapy. One chance. If they refuse or if therapy doesn't work, it's permanent no contact. My anxiety has dropped significantly since we made this decision. I don't have to constantly worry about the next attack. The next time they'll humiliate my wife or tear me down. Now that those toxic family members can't interfere, my relationship with my other sister is actually getting stronger. Our mom always got in the way before, but now she can't. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.